Are you a couple in crisis? Is the spark in your marriage or relationship fading? Or has an affair recently turned your world upside down? Even if you think your relationship is beyond repair, if you truly want to save your marriage or relationship, then one place to turn is the Couples Academy.
Have you been yearning for more closeness and intimacy? Nothing impacts us more than the person with whom we share our life with. Yet we rarely take the time needed to invest in our relationships. Well, if that is you, welcome to Couples Academy's Power Couples Retreat, a unique opportunity to restore, revive, and recommit yourself to a life of relational bliss. Our weekend experience will allow you and your spouse to learn how to create the partnership of your dreams. From our workshops to our couples activities to your scheduled time alone with you and your spouse, you will gain the tools needed to have a truly successful marriage.
Today on Love Maps, we meet with Hassani and Danielle Pettiford to learn how this husband and wife co-founded the Couples Academy, a place that specializes in what they call infidelity recovery and divorce prevention. Join us on Love Maps as we take a look inside the Couples Academy. It's a common scene, a mother doing homework with her daughters. But in this case, the mother is Danielle Pettiford, co-founder of the Couples Academy. She is one half of the Couples Academy. Husband Hassani Pettiford makes up the other half of this dynamic team that specializes in couples counseling. We sat down with the Pettifords to discuss how they met, how they started the Couples Academy, and what they do to coach couples in crisis.
So anyway, we're talking about the challenges you both are having in terms of believing that this is possible for you. So what's the apprehension you're having? Because I'm feeling apprehension even in your tone. Explain that to me. Okay, but I understand what you're saying, but the same level of faith that you apply to your business, that you apply to your education, that you apply to your personal goals, you have to apply that same level of faith to your marriage. Because if you don't believe it's possible, then what are we here for in the first place? I can't believe this more than you believe it. I'm here to guide you through a process, but I need you in this. Marriage is hard work. It's spelled W-O-R-K.
It's another day at the office for the Pettifords, except this office operates from the comfort of their own basement. The couple has been happily married for over 12 years and discuss what first led to their initial attraction.
The first time I met Hassani, I saw him at his very first seminar in Newark, New Jersey. I saw him there. When I saw him, I was impacted by his speech. It transformed the way that I thought. And I reached out to him when I got home and I said, you know what? What I learned from you was so awesome that I'm going to give to your ministry. I'm going to give to everything that you're doing. And that's how I opened the door for us to meet. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, he said, you know what? Since you're giving to what I'm doing, let's get together and I'm going to mentor you. That's how we met.
Hassani's background is a celebrity marriage coach who has spent the last 17 years working with high-profile clients and professionals, put him on the road frequently.
Spent a lot of time communicating back and forth through email and phone calls, but I was still traveling a lot. I was on the road, so we kind of spoke in spurts. And I guess, in those conversations, we realized that we had chemistry, we had connection, and it kind of transitioned into more than just a friendship, and we began dating.
I think that we realized that there was more to our relationship after dating a couple of times. We went out a lot. We were just friends. We hung out all the time. We worked together. We started sharing business together. And then one day he popped this question. I was always saying to him, you're so dynamic. Every time you go somewhere, there are ladies following you around. He said, well, what's up with you? And I was just like, well, what is up with us? It was like finally he had said something, and that was maybe like 6 months in.
Opportunity just never allowed us to actually physically be in each other's presence. So I would say for the first few months, literally, it was emails, phone calls occasionally, because I was gone. I was traveling around the country speaking for universities, trade associations, churches. And after my season kind of died down after the season was over, then we finally connected. And I remember the first time we actually got together after our initial meeting, our first date, she actually paid for it. She bought the tickets up front. We went to the movies. Then we went out to eat.
That was
and
cool.
that was the first and last date she ever paid
That's
for.
right.
The advent of modern technology not only connected the Pettifords, but now gives them the chance to counsel clients from around the world right from their home.
An average day, what does that look like for us? Well, typically we have a number of different sessions with clients virtually. Now, even though we're here in the Atlanta area, interestingly enough, Metro Atlanta is so huge, and with traffic and all types of issues, people rather counsel with us in the comfort of their home. So we actually have televisions and screens and everything to make it conducive for us to feel as if we're in the same room with one another. So whether we're working with clients or we're actually working on homework for those couples as they transition from sessions from week to week. Then we also have a number of different projects where we've written 14 books. We have a couple of television shows. We travel doing seminars and retreats all around the world. And so we have a pretty full schedule. And one thing I like about what we do, every day is different. And I think that's what really drives us every single day, knowing that we're gonna have new experiences, meeting new people, and making new impact in different areas of our lives and then the lives of others.
Yep, and one of the things I like is that I don't have to roll out of bed, get dressed, and go drive anywhere. Literally, and sometimes it is this. Sometimes we're coming downstairs and we're still in our pajamas. We have a cup of coffee. If there's no clients coming in, we have a cup of coffee. We get to chat in the morning. We get to pray in the morning. You know, we get to have lunch, breakfast and lunch together. So I think it helps us stay close because we're always interacting in some way.
Their road to happiness, like so many others, wasn't all wine and roses, and the struggles the Pettifords faced as husband and wife planted the seeds of what would become known as the Couples Academy.
Well, I think that what we do as a couple in terms of our business was birthed out of a lot of pain. You know, we went through challenging times in our relationship. I remember it was like almost the second year in where we were literally on the verge of divorce. And we were faced with an option. Either I was going to divorce her or she was going to divorce me. But instead, I made the decision to divorce me from myself. I decided to divorce me from my poor communication habits. I decided to divorce myself from my false definition of masculinity that was getting in the way of our union. And when I began to work on me, all of a sudden the relationship began to change. As long as I was working on the marriage, in essence, what I was trying to do was fix her because she was the reason why we had marital conflict, right? That's typically how we do. But when I began to really self-diagnose me and realize that I'm the lowest common denominator in all of my relationships. So if I'm going through a bad experience in this relationship, what am I bringing to the table? And that really saved us and helped transition us into a better place.
Right, and when we got to a better place, we said, you know what? We can't look 90 degrees around us and find any other happy couples. We had no happy couple friends. We had no happy couple family. There was nobody happy. And when we figured it out, like we figured how to make this thing work, we were like, we should become family and marriage counselors and help other people. And that's what we did.
Hassani's decision to fix himself became a breakthrough for the couple and a cornerstone of the Couple Academy's mission to ensure infidelity recovery and prevent divorce.
You know, many couples come to us for a variety of different reasons, but at the end of the day, you know, after years of working with so many different types of situations, we've discovered that you really don't have a financial problem or a sex problem or a parenting problem or an in-law problem. What you truly have is an inability to effectively communicate, and the problems manifest in all of those areas. And communication is the foundation of all successful relationships. But because we have cross signals, mixed signals, and because we're just wired different, we have different languages, and oftentimes that creates a clash in terms of even understanding each other and knowing how to deliver the right messaging for our partner to receive it. So when we really take a comprehensive approach and holistic approach to really reconstructing the way couples interact with each other, they realize that, oh, this problem that we struggle with for all these years, it's salvageable.
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest issues for women is the whole sexual piece, which is a form of communication. Because when you're working with your spouse all day long, men think differently. Men want sex, women want romance, right? And so what happens is there's no time for the romance, but a man is always gonna wanna have sex. There's no time off for that, right? And so what happens is that women feel like, okay, I'm burned out in these areas. I'm mommy, I'm wife, I'm business mogul, and there's no time for romance, and so that part of the relationship starts to drain away. And what we have found works is scheduling. And it does not sound romantic, and I thought it wasn't romantic at first, but it has been the single most important thing for us that has saved our romance, is actually being able to schedule the romance, schedule the sex, and schedule everything else around it to make sure that we stay husband and wife, and stay healthy business partners.
The reality is there's a major difference between your relationship and your marriage. And I think most people make those two things synonymous, and they're really not. Your relationship speaks to your emotional connection, meeting each other's needs, your love languages, sexual fulfillment, the way in which you communicate. But your marriage speaks more to the duties, the responsibilities, the obligations of managing a household, the finances, the parenting. So they require two completely different skill sets. And I think that what happens is we have great connection when we're dating. But as soon as we say I do, we almost give up the relationship for the sake of the marriage. And the relationship becomes the last thing on the list of priorities. And I've seen so many individuals, so many couples, they've had great relationships, great passion, connection, but horrible marriage in terms of the structure and what's happening in the home, or vice versa. On paper, marriage is perfect. Money in the bank, kids are taken care of, households straight, but there's no connection here. There's no communication. So you really have to have a focus on both, giving a full court press in both areas in order for you to truly be successful.
And there's no one-size-fits-all to guarantee success. The Pettifords offer a wide range of approaches to couples counseling.
What's interesting about our approach is that we're not the typical therapist or counselor, and many of them do a phenomenal job, but their style is different. We're more coaches, so there's a different methodology, and we've realized that working with our couples, they prefer that method more because it allows them to establish goals that are now trackable, so we're constantly moving forward to get to a final destination. We've dealt with couples who have experienced all types of pain. We've had a number of awesome testimonials by couples who've gone through all sorts of things.
So we just finished a weekend with the Couples Academy, and before we entered into this weekend, we've been married for 5 years and basically together most of our lives for about 12 years. And I think through that time, you grow separately, you have a lot of disconnect. Communication was a big problem for us, and the monotony of every day. And when the kids came around, we have 2 beautiful daughters, but I kind of started centering my whole world around the 2 girls, and it could have been better for us. Different issues were coming up, and instead of just accepting that marriage and who we were, we wanted better. And I did a quick little Google search one day looking for something more than therapy, something different than a psychologist, and up came this website, and I emailed and said, can you guys recommend something? We're in Toronto, Canada. And they said, we're going to come down to you. And we met up in Mississauga, and we just finished a Couples Academy coaching, and it's been 3 days, and we're already seeing the results.
After going through the Couples Academy, it feels like a breath of fresh air. I feel liberated and free with my feelings, not just with myself, but more importantly, my feelings to share with my wife, which had ceased for a very long time. And it just feels amazing. I look at her and I see what I fell in love with when I was a little kid. And as much as I was not into doing this weekend, I am so happy that I did it. I feel rejuvenated, reinvigorated, rehabilitated, and I love the Couples Academy. It's done wonders in 3 days, and we are going to continue with this because it's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a weekend thing.
And I just want to say that instead of I guess therapists will kind of ask you, how do you feel? And they kind of have a laid back approach. The Couples Academy, they give you tools and they walk you through the steps. They hold your hand. They really mentor you through it. And it's just nothing that we had ever experienced.
teaches you how to problem solve. Identify the problem and now solve the problem.
Yeah.
And which is very encouraging.
So we're happy.
Rejuvenated couples are one byproduct of the Pettiford's approach to counseling. The business has also wed the Pettiford's skills and passions.
We actually did birth the couples business school, and that was sort of like the merging of our two skills. Hassani has always been in the relationship space, even before we had our problems. He's been working on college campuses, dealing with interpersonal relationships with students. And I have a background in marketing and graphic design and all of that, and so that's where we kind of brought our two skills together in business. So this year, launching the Couples Business School is us merging our skills together and really operating in our own expertise to the highest level and bringing that to couples. So that is one thing that for me is saying, okay, Couples Academy has actually come full circle to what it's supposed to do. It is very difficult working with your spouse. It's one of the reasons why we have a program called the Couples Business School. Because what we found is that in his practice working with couples, the ones that have a business together have the biggest challenges because their livelihood is attached to their relationship. If they don't get along, then they're not eating and everything falls apart. And it's difficult. It's difficult to switch hats. It's difficult to know when to be wife, when to be mommy, when to be business partner. And so those are the challenges that we help couples work through.
And what we found is that if a couple is struggling in their relationship, there's a direct correlation on their business.
Yeah.
Just everything suffers. But when they're in a better place, then all of a sudden their relationship, their business starts to take off as well. So we kind of, with the Couples Business School and Couples Academy, help them to find the balance in both areas so that they can thrive. I think that through trial and error and just this journey, it has helped to really shape and focus where we are and what it is that we're ultimately doing. And what we want to do is have a global impact with a local feel and touch. And so we realize that no matter what your race, what your religion, what your ethnicity, no matter where you are in the world, we're all going through the same things and we're looking for help. And Couples Academy is one of those organizations that are there to answer the call to help couples find fulfillment within their relationships.
Hassani Pettiford has spent almost 20 years as a marriage coach and has appeared on television as well, counseling athletes and Hollywood executives through heartbreak. But those experiences left him wanting to do something more direct.
My main objective is to help people have healthy, productive, successful relationships where both parties involved are happy, they're emotionally invested, and they feel like they're getting a return on that investment. So it seems as though in this relationship, you kind of have the best of both worlds.
I do.
You have a commitment in one hand, but you're able to be free enough to go out with your boys and to flirt with other women and, to have a wandering eye and to do all that type of thing while she's home waiting for you to come home. But a lot of the TV work we began to do, we really had to monitor what we began to involve ourselves in because media could be a necessary evil. You need it to promote your brand so that your messaging gets out to the right people. But sometimes, depending upon, the nature of the show, it could really dampen the image and the integrity of what you're trying to do. So it's like one of those necessary evils, and you just kind of figure out how to navigate this journey as you go along. So one thing that's important for us with Couples Academy is that we do everything that we can to maintain the integrity of the brand. We've gone through transitions. At first, we were really focused on working with couples who had decent relationships but wanted to make them better. But we realized that people weren't really interested in that. We were getting calls from people who are in crisis, those on the verge of divorce, those who just experienced infidelity, not knowing whether they want to stay or whether they want to go. So we really put more of a focus on really helping people get out of their pain and placing them on the path to fulfillment. Okay, but I understand what you're saying, but the same level of faith that you apply to your business, that you apply to your education, that you apply to your personal goals, you have to apply that same level of faith to your marriage. Because
what sets Hassani and Danielle apart is their ability to coach couples through crisis. Just like a sports team that needs a good coach to win, our relationship is no different.
One thing that's unique about Couples Academy, I believe, is our approach and methodology. There are many therapists and counselors that do an amazing work with couples, but because we're coaches, we take on a different path, if you will, to get to that final destination. And, people have come to us with the hardest cases, the most stickiest issues, where children have been the result of an illicit affair, or maybe the marriage was 20 years long and the affair relationship was just as long, so it was an emotional tie. We've had other incidences where spouses have had 20, 30 partners within the confines of that 5-year relationship. Another one where there was suicide, there was death, there were sex tapes, just anything you can imagine. And in the midst of all of that turmoil, when the future looked bleak and no one thought that they could ever recover, we were able to help those couples really overcome their challenges, and they're still together today. And a lot of the residue of the pain that they've experienced is no longer a part of their existing relationship. So Couples Academy has done an amazing work working with couples.
There have been cases, as a matter of fact, we were just talking about this yesterday on one of our shows, where people will leave, have an affair, leave the home, asked to be divorced, send divorce papers, and the spouse is holding on and says no. Holding on, fighting, and waiting for that person to come back. And the thing is just like you have to ask yourself, okay, what is going on with you that you have allowed this person to be unfaithful to you, leave and move in with another person, and you're still holding on? At some point, you have to realize that the relationship is over. Now, there are times when it works out. There are times when people have done it and there were success stories and people actually came back and this family was restored. But you also know people who have hit the lottery too. It's not going to happen for you. So you have to look at every situation, kind of like segment out each situation, talk to the people and find out what's going on so that you find out exactly why people are trying to leave the relationship before you call it quits or hold on to something that's over.
And let me just say that, you know what, divorce for us is the last option. Mm-hmm. There's so many different steps along the way before you even get to that point. I think when couples experience crisis, that's the first thing that they want to do when it's ultimately the last. And so we kind of help guide couples through that process. And if nothing is salvageable, then obviously in some cases, extreme cases, divorce is really the only option.
Infidelity, says Hassani, is complex, and couples who face the issue need guidance to see how it was set in motion.
You know, it's quite interesting. People who have affairs don't necessarily want out of the marriage, because if they wanted out of the marriage, they would simply get a divorce. So there's enough to remain in it, but not enough to keep you out of an illicit affair. You know, I think that it's important for us to understand the difference between the law of attraction and the law of attachment. Ultimately, when you got together with your partner, it was based upon attraction, physical attraction, emotional desirability. And after time, there's an emotional disconnect. So we kind of transition from being soulmates to role mates to roommates. So the attraction isn't there, and it may cause us to be vulnerable enough to connect with others outside of the confines of marriage. But the law of attachment keeps us in the marriage. Well, what does that mean? Well, my children are attached to the marriage. My finances are attached to this marriage. My way of life, my reputation, our friends are attached to the marriage. So even though there's no attraction, there's ultimately an attachment. And so it's important to really help couples recover from affairs by reconnecting the attraction that they once had with one another. I think the reasons why people cheat change all the time, but generally there are 4 classifications of an affair. It's either going to be a one-night stand, what we call emotional entanglement, sexual compulsion, or a marital void. And so because I'm not getting my need met in a relationship, I pursue something outside of that relationship. So there are all types of different experiences and circumstances, but typically they fit into one of those 4 categories. And guess what? Depending upon the classification of the affair determines the recovery process. You could apply the wrong recovery to a certain type of an affair, and it just doesn't work. So it really takes working with someone who actually knows and specializes in these challenging scenarios in order to give you a path of full recovery.
A betrayal of trust can be so severe that it seems impossible to repair the breach, but the Pettifords offer hope and a step-by-step approach.
Well, it's interesting. When people come in, no matter what their situation is, we take them through several steps of recovery. First is what we will call the disclosure phase. They've already discovered the affair. The disclosure phase is when we engage in real conversations and deal with the facts and the feelings of the affair. We're trying to discover the why. Oftentimes, the hurt spouse doesn't know the why, and so it's hard for them to move forward. But interestingly enough, the unfaithful partner may not know the why either. If he or she does not discover the why, it's bound to happen again. So after we take them through full discovery, then we transition into the forgiveness phase. Most people know the principle of forgiveness, but haven't experienced it growing up, don't know what it looks like. So we kind of unpack that and walk them through what true forgiveness is, and it comes with accountability of both partners. The next phase is the trust building phase. Fine, I forgive you, but I don't know if I can trust you again. So that's a process within itself. After we've done that, then it's about rekindling the intimacy and passion that you have with one another. And for some couples, it takes them a lot longer than others, but we've realized that when couples get help statistically, once they've reached the 2nd year anniversary of the discovery of the affair, it's that process of time that allows them to properly heal. Couples who do not receive any help and they attempt to do it on their own may have the stain, the residue, and the stigma of that affair for the rest of their marriage or for the rest of their lives, even if the marriage doesn't even last. I think ultimately we are all wired to connect on some level. We talk about the importance of the 3 relationships you've got to master. First is the relationship that you have with God. That's your spiritual connection, your vertical relationship. Then the relationship you have with yourself. That's your internal relationship. And finally, the relationship that you have with your partner. That's your horizontal relationship. And I think if you place a focus on all 3 and they're all healthy, then you can have a holistic approach to what life should be like for an individual.
And I think that, as we all know, if you believe in the Bible, if you don't, the human being was the first creation, and then the second human, the man was the first creation. The second creation was the woman, because alone he was not complete. And I feel like a couple that is healthy, that is whole, that is communicating and operating to the highest level is compatible and not competitive, but compatible with one another. There's a lot of stuff in Hassani that I don't have. There's a lot of stuff that Hassani has that I have that he doesn't have. And together we work together seamlessly. And I think that one of the major problems is that most couples are competing with each other so much that they never get to the point of understanding the power and the value. I tell women, speak to the seed in your spouse, not to the weeds. Because we can look at all the negative things that are inside of you. All of us are full of negative stuff, as he said, the marinade. But when you start speaking to the thing that you saw the first day that you met that person, and you start watering that seed with words of affirmation and speaking the love language of your spouse, you'll find that all kinds of beautiful things bloom. And that's the thing that couples have, that you will not have alone.
Deep down, as Hassani said, we are all wired to connect, and the very process of forging a successful relationship can be the cornerstone of a productive, healthy life that still retains its spark.